excited to get to chat to all of you today. Like Amy said, my name is Megan, and I am a travel writer. I'm based in Des Moines, so just a little bit up the road from all of you. But I like to write about road trips and world's largest things and kind of offbeat attractions. And so I'm excited to talk to you a little bit today about just kind of how to plan. Oh, that's not what I want to do. How to plan your next adventure. And just in light of kind of what we were talking about earlier, it doesn't need to be a around the world in 80 days full on adventure. It can just be, a trip to the next town or something like that. One of the things that I really like to focus on and like to tell people who, think that they don't have the time or the resources to travel is that you get to pick. So you can decide what is an adventure for you. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about how to plan some of those things, some things to just think about. And then feel free to interrupt me at any point. If you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself or toss it in the chat. I want this to be, a conversation, not just me talking at you. So if you have a question or you have an experience with one of these things, feel free to let me know. And so, like I said, I'm Megan. I'm a freelance travel writer. I have a blog at oleoiniowa.com. And then last year, it was kind of poor timing. It almost is its 1-year book birthday, but I wrote a book called Iowa Supper Clubs that outlines kind of the history of supper clubs across the state. Some of the favorites that are now gone, and then has a chapter for probably 10 to 12 of the supper clubs that are still open around the state. So it was not a great year to kind of go do dine in, but I'm hoping kind of in the next, hopefully 6 to 12 months that we get to do some more fun promo for that. But it's been a fun way to connect to some of those dining experiences in the meantime and get to remember some of those. Because steak and prime rib to go is just not the same. So we're going to start with deciding what type of traveler you are when it comes to planning a trip or going somewhere. And I will start by telling you that, skipped some. So I kind of grouped people into 2 buckets. So you are either a well-planned Pam or you are a winging it Wendy. I will tell you right now, I am a well-planned Pam. I really like to have an agenda and an itinerary and things figured out. My fiance would be very happy to just wing it and decide, what we do as we go. So it really depends, just how you prefer to travel. And then also knowing, the other people you're traveling with, how they like to travel. And so, your first person, and obviously this is a spectrum. So you might be, some of these things. I know for me, like I love to have my things booked ahead of time. I like to have an itinerary if there's things I know that are only going to be open, one day that we're visiting. My one here that I am not good at is I am a packing procrastinator. So I will wait until the very last minute to pack before we leave for a trip. But, maybe you're one of those people who has their suitcase ready to go by the door like a week in advance. So you don't have to do last minute laundry. I aspire to be you, but I am not. And then, maybe you're a person who likes to show up extra early at the airport just so you have some time to not feel stressed. I know I grew up in Chicago. And so that was like much more of an issue than living in Des Moines, where it's like a good 30 minutes to get through the airport. Or maybe you're closer to the person on the right. Maybe you kind of, like to wait and see. I know a lot of this kind of spontaneous stuff, especially within the last year with COVID and some of those things that we need to plan a little bit more for now is a little bit less spontaneous feeling. But maybe, you like to just kind of drive and see where the road takes you and what you find. You wait to pack until right before. And then, maybe you don't see the point of waiting around the airport. You're going to show up, you're going to get on your flight, and you're going to be gone. And so, like I said, there's some pros and cons to both of these. So if you're planning ahead, you don't have to stress out and try to figure out, what are we going to do? You know kind of what your trip will look like, and you won't miss out on the things that you really want to do. If you show up and they're closed for Mondays, ahead of time, okay, I need to do this on Saturday or Sunday. Some cons, you might miss out on some of the surprises that travel brings you. So if you have absolutely every moment scheduled and you stumble upon something that, you might like to do or is a surprise, you might not have time to wedge that into your schedule. You also, I know this one is very true for me, you might feel stressed if things don't go according to plan. So if you had a very rigid plan of how you wanted your day to go, I think COVID has also made us all a lot more flexible. So we just kind of know, if I don't feel comfortable in this place, or if they're not open, or they're only doing carry out service, we just kind of adapt to those things. And it's also not always the best way to have a relaxing vacation. We'll talk about kind of the why of your trip and how that can really make a difference in your planning too. But I know I am totally content to go sit on a beach with a whole big stack of books for a whole week. And that's like a fine vacation for me. My fiance is not that way. He really likes to have activities and be doing something. And so knowing, what is the purpose of your vacation can help with that too. And then on the flip side, like I said, if you're more like Wendy, maybe you discover places along the way. You get to be in the moment. You don't have to worry about, having a set itinerary where if you get really wrapped up in doing something, suddenly it's 2 p.m. and you're like, well, now we missed all of these things I had planned because we had such a set schedule. And you kind of get the freedom to choose what you want to do depending on how you feel that day. So you're not locked into saying, I said I was going to do this and now I have to do it. Some of the cons here, if you kind of wait and see, you might end up paying more for booking last minute, or you might not have as much of a selection as if you booked ahead of time. And you might not be able to fit everything in. And then one of the things that I know is true, at least depending on the people I know I'm traveling with, if you're traveling with people who are planners and you like to wing it, that might cause some stress for your travel group. So just knowing those things ahead of time and just kind of thinking about, what are some of those styles that you like to travel in. And so then we're going to talk about figuring out what's important. So like I said, when you travel, the why is important. Some of the other things are important too to consider when you're planning a trip. So I put together the 5 W's of not journalism travel planning. I went to journalism school, so I was like, oh, this works. So the who, all of these things, really, if you said, the same trip, any of these factors could change a lot of things about how you plan a trip. So if you're planning a trip for just yourself, or for you and your partner, or for your whole family with kids and grandkids, that trip is going to look probably different depending on who's going, even if you're going to the same destination. The what, so what are the things you definitely want to do and see? Is this trip specifically to see a museum or to visit, a specific place or a specific person? The when, how long are you going for? That one is pretty straightforward. The where, I feel like this is where most people start when you're planning a trip. You have an idea of kind of where you want to go or a list of places you want to go, whether that's, a museum or a town or a country. And then the why. So this is one of the ones that I really think can determine how your trip planning goes. So are you going, just to see family? Are you going to visit a new place? What is the reason behind your trip? Are you just going for fun? And then your mode of travel. So are you a road trip person? That's my preferred mode of travel, is to have a car and to be kind of in charge of where I want to go and when. Are you flying? Do you need to, figure out a car or something after that? Or are you taking a train? And so thinking about a trip you'd like to plan, I just wanted us to noodle a little bit about how your why can impact that. And so I know personally, when we travel to visit my grandma, she lives in Connecticut. The why for that trip is very different because we're going to see her than if I was planning a trip to, just recreationally go to Connecticut. The things that I'm going to do along the way are going to look different, and how I'm going to spend my time is going to look different because my why is to visit her and spend quality time with her. And so just kind of thinking through, why am I planning this trip? Is it, to spend times with my grandkids? Is it to explore a new place? And then really using that to help guide the things you're doing and what you want to plan so that you don't have to feel like you need to schedule every single minute, and you kind of have an expectation for, oh, this is, what I'm doing because of the purpose of my trip. And so then we're going to talk about an area that I really love, which is logistics. No, not everyone loves this sort of an area, but I enjoy the planning part. Oh, come on. So, we advanced a lot of slides. Okay. So Just some general tips when it comes to trip logistics. This obviously applies to if you're doing all your own booking yourself. So if you're working with a travel agent who's helping kind of with some of the higher level stuff, they'll handle a lot of these things and be your point of contact. But if you're doing the booking, I always recommend just booking directly with the provider or with the hotel or airline or whatever you happen to be booking. I know there's a lot of sites like hotels.com and Viator and some of those things that you can book through that give you kind of all the options in one place, especially when it comes to needing to make changes or having, things come up and needing to cancel. Your best bet for getting a refund or for getting customer support is always to book directly through, the airline. So booking directly with Delta, directly with Southwest. Same goes for your hotel. So booking directly through the hotel or their website, just to make sure that they know you're coming and it's not a surprise to either of you. Also signing up for a loyalty or rewards program if you don't already have, a brand that you're loyal to and stick with. So I have friends who, always fly American or always fly Southwest. We have a Marriott rewards card and loyalty program that if you use it for non-travel things, you can earn, free nights in hotels through points and things like that. So that can be a really easy way just in your daily life if you're trying to save up for a trip, or even if you just want like a fun weekend away that you don't have to worry about budgeting in. Signing up for some of those things and just using them, as part of your normal habit is a good way to do that. And then sticking with the one that you choose. And so not signing up for, all 5 of them, saying, I really like Marriott properties, or I really like Hyatt properties, or whatever those are, and then kind of being consistent there. Be mindful of cancellation and trip changes. So that's a thing I think we're all extra mindful of in the last year and a half. But just making sure, I know when we have looked at flights recently, you can pay like $5 or $10 extra to be able to cancel your flight with no penalty and get a full refund. So just checking for some of those things when you're booking to see, if I do need to move or cancel this trip, is it going to cost me a lot of extra money? Am I going to get my money back? Is it going to be, a full refund, or is it going to be in the form of like a voucher that I need to use at a later time? So just thinking about some of those things. And then like we talked about, remember your why. So remember when you're doing these bookings, like, why are you planning this trip? Are you doing it to see the new place? Then maybe you want to prioritize, staying closer to the area you're exploring. Or if you're spending time with family, maybe you want to, get a earlier flight in the morning so you can spend more time with them when you get there.
Hey, Megan, quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have a, when you're looking at rewards programs, have you found a really good site that allows you to look at multiples at once, or would you recommend just going to their websites individually?
Yeah, there are a few. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what it's called, but I will email it to you and then you can share it with everybody. But yeah, there are a few that if you're not like already brand loyal to someone and know like, oh, I really, like staying at Marriott's. We just kind of ended up there because that's where my fiance a lot of times would stay for work. And so we were like, oh, this really adds up quickly for us. But yeah, there are some that compare kind of hotels and airlines. There's also some that compare just like your general travel like credit cards. So if you don't want a brand specific one, Chase has a lot of really like travel beneficial cards. I know it's the Chase Sapphire Preferred has a lot of travel benefit. And then for a lot of those, you can also convert your points to like a Marriott or to a American Airlines point without a lot of like difference there. And so you can, if you have, a lot of credit card points you're not planning on using for something, you can maybe put them towards a flight or to a hotel or something like that. But that's a good question. Yeah, I'll find what that one is called and I'll send that over. Any other questions? Awesome. If you let me know, if you think of any, you let me know. Okay. And so our next one, so this is kind of expert level travel planning for everyone. So everyone likes to plan a little bit differently. Depending on how involved you want to be, you can, do a variety of different things. So I like to say like your beginner is kind of your napkin sketch plan. So you kind of know like these are loosely the things I want to do. This is what I'm excited about. You might be using, I still really like brochures and travel guides from places. And so if you know you're going to like Kansas City, if you go to the Kansas City tourism destination website, many of those places have forms you can fill out to have a travel guide or a brochure sent to you in the mail for free. And so that's a really nice resource. A lot of statewide tourism offices offer that as well. So I know the Travel Iowa website also does that. If you don't want the physical version, a lot of them have the PDF online as well. And then books, I also am still like a paper book person. I don't have an e-reader. I really like having a physical book. And so right now I've got, oh gosh, probably 7 or 8 different books because we're planning a month-long Route 66 road trip that we're taking later this fall. And so I am knee deep in every possible Route 66 book because I just want to know all the things and kind of see from a variety of places where some of the spots along the way we might want to stop are. And then even if you're, not planning a lot, typically I found most people book kind of those essentials in advance. So obviously, if you need to fly somewhere, you're going to book your flight to get there. And then a lot of times people will also book their accommodations. So either your hotel or an Airbnb, or, you're staying with family. If you're not kind of figuring out every moment, you probably at least have those few things. And then kind of your middle bucket that we'll talk about some of these things. I love using social media to find places that maybe I wouldn't find from a more traditional brochure or from a book. Same with sites like Road Trippers. We'll talk about those a little bit, but maybe you've kind of mapped out your route and have some things you want to see along the way. And then maybe you've made, your essential bookings and then also like a reservation or two at either a restaurant you really like or a museum that you want to visit. And then this advanced category, which is where I fall into with our Route 66 road trip, maybe to a fault, is having like custom Google Maps with the things that you want to see along the way and kind of a series of elaborate plans for what you want to do. So making sure that you've got really the things that are important to you. So for us, that's experiencing some of those like classic motels and some of those other really cool spots along the way. And so we've booked those pretty far in advance to make sure that in the time frame that we are going to be visiting that we would be able to do that. So all of these things just kind of keep coming back to your why and really your what's most important to you. So now we're going to talk about how to find cool things because you might know, I'm going to this destination, but maybe you have the opportunity to find things that you wouldn't have maybe discovered on your own. So I always like to do, even if I know I'm going to visit a certain thing, I always like to do a little bit of searching and poking around just to see if there's anything else I want to see while I'm there. So social media, like I said, is a really great way to find some of these things. If you're on Facebook, there's basically a Facebook group for everything at this point. And so I mentioned we're taking that Route 66 trip. There's a Route 66 Traveler Facebook group that has thousands of members from all around the world of people who either live along Route 66 or hoping to travel Route 66. And it's been really helpful just to see even like road closures or if they're having severe weather or things like that, just that are changing a little bit more minute to minute. But also to have that community of people for recommendations and to be able to search in there and see, okay, we have a question about staying at this motel. Has anyone else stayed there? And having that whole resource of people. So that's a really nice option. If you use Pinterest, Pinterest is a great way to find information for your travels. So you can search by location and see kind of a collection of image-based things that other people have explored and linked to. Same with Instagram. If you're on Instagram, you can search either by like the hashtags for specific destinations or places or by the location themselves. So that's a nice way to see like, what are people posting about this place or this restaurant? And then YouTube videos is another one that I really like just to kind of get a feel of a place and learn a little bit about something maybe in a longer form way than you might just from like an article on a website. So then did I skip one? Okay, good. Or maybe not. Okay. So there's also a few websites that I really like for finding kind of fun, offbeat things along the way that maybe I wouldn't discover on my own. So one of them is roadtrippers.com, and they have essentially a map search that you can search and filter by all of these things up here. So you can filter by accommodations, by, points of interest, by outdoor activities or restaurants, and see, move my mouse too much, see just all of the different places along your route if you're planning, a specific road trip. You can also do it without a route. So if you're just kind of going, you're going to St. Louis, you can zoom in on St. Louis and see all of the things that might be around you. Roadside America is one I like if you like weird, kitschy things like the Taxidermy Miniatures Museum. This is a fun one for you. You can sort by state and then kind of see on a map too, like where are all of these things. They do, I think, have a mobile app. I have not used it. I usually just use their website. But they have, every weird world's largest or funky museum you could ever want. And then Atlas Obscura is another one, especially if you really like historical things. They have a lot of like offbeat history that maybe isn't places to visit that still exist now, but at least some fun context of places that used to exist. So I know as we've been kind of planning our Route 66 trip, one of them has been a community outside of, I think, St. Louis that was completely evacuated in the 80s because of a dioxin exposure and is now a state park, but like not a place you would ever know if you were driving by it, but just kind of an interesting thing to learn about the place that we're going to. So this one is a neat site to use. They've got kind of different buckets of places to explore, different culinary things, and they are a global one. So if you're traveling outside the US, this is a really fun one to use too. And then your library, like I mentioned, I love books and reading. The library is a great resource if you don't want to, invest in your own travel books or things like that for your trip planning. And then your reference librarians are also a really great resource because someone has probably come in and asked them for something like this. Let's see. Phyllis asked, any recommendations for single travelers or group trips for single travelers? Yes, there is, depending on what you like to do. There is a group, oh gosh, what are they called? I think it's Mid-Mod Tours, but they are based out of Des Moines, and they do trips down to a bunch of different places. They do some to like Nashville, and they do some to, I think they did one to Waco, to the silos for that Chip and Joanna Gaines have, but they do kind of like a group style trip that you can sign up for just you. I feel like a lot of places do things like that, just depending on what you're interested in. And so if I'm interested in this kind of thing, and do a little Googling. If you have a specific interest, I am also happy to Google for you because I just love things like that. And I wanted to give you guys my contact info too, if you did have questions. But yeah, trying to think too. I know even some people I know are doing like a group cruise, and so they are a couple who is a full-time travel writing couple. They do a lot of cruising, and some of their followers are really interested in that, and so they are doing like a cruise with them, and so they have a block of rooms, so you can, like, if you're a single person who maybe wouldn't go on a cruise by themselves, book with them to go on this cruise together. So there's, depending on what you're interested in, there's definitely some fun options out there. Well, like I said, I will send that link to Amy, but yeah, if you guys think of any other questions, or if you're planning a trip and you have questions about a specific place, I am always happy to be a resource or send recommendations over.
So are you going to take some extra money to bring home muscle cars that you find on Route 66?
Oh man, my dad would love that.
They're
he has a 59 Corvette that's his baby. And my high school junker car was a 77 Mercedes that I still dream of finding, one that's not totally rusted out. But yeah, my fiance has already had a very serious talk with me about, like, we will not be purchasing a vehicle that you find because we don't have the garage space for it. So very much, my mom had the similar conversation. She's like, you will not be sending him classic car photos of anything you find that's available. So
they're beautiful.
I'm excited. We're looking forward to it. It's been a bucket list thing for quite a bit. So
are you going to start in Illinois, or are you going?
We are, yeah. So my family, I grew up in LaGrange, so just west of Chicago. And my parents actually live like 2 blocks from where Route 66 goes through by them, but we're starting there. And then I am forcing my fiance to drive into the city so we can go to the very actual start and then drive back to start there. So we'll do that. We leave to drive there September 2nd, and then we'll end in Santa Monica on, September 19th. So we're taking a good chunk of time, which will be fun.
Sounds like you have the days planned.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, I've been thinking about it so long that I'm just very planned, but then it's been funny because we travel by road trip. And so we're used to driving much further. And so I was like, I don't know if we're going to fit everything in. And my fiance Josh was like, well, how far are we driving that day? And I was like, well, like 2 hours. And he was like, I think we'll have plenty of time. So I know we won't see it all, but we at least will have some good spots that we know we want to hit. I am more than willing to share my slides. So I'll send those over to Amy too with that link. But yes, yeah, you are more than welcome to them.
Yeah, we did about 3 states on motorcycles. That was
fun. Oh, fun. That's more motorcycle stamina than I have when people drive the whole route. I'm like, oh, I'll take a car.
I'll enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you. It'll be fun.
Do you have a rule of thumb that you try to for like your day travel? My parents had this joke about a 3, 3, and 3. No more than 300 miles, or something about 3 hours, and then 3 drinks when you get there, or something like that.
Oh, that's a good rule. I like that. No, we do have so for like little stops, I am infamously like, oh, there's this thing I want to see, or I saw a sign and it said it was just like a mile off the road, and like 45 minutes later you arrive there. And so for like non-essential things, we do have a rule where it's like, if it says that there's a gas station and you can't physically see the gas station, like we will wait. I'm trying to think if we have any other hard and fast rules. We drove to San Francisco from Iowa one time, and that was across the salt flats in the desert. And so we tried to do a half tank of gas rule, just in case you end up somewhere that's, a little bit more remote. You're not worried about having to flag anybody down because you ran out of gas. Typically, like I said, I like to book and know where we're going to stay. In pre-COVID times, we maybe did a little bit more loosey-goosiness of that. For the Route 66 trip we're doing, we have, I think, all of our hotels booked, just because we also didn't know how busy things would be now that, more people are out and about because they're vaccinated. And so we figured, better have a place to stay and not have to keep driving, especially because some of the places that we were excited to stay are like the wigwam shaped motels and things like that do kind of fill up. So that was a thing that we usually think about. But otherwise, one of my personal car rules is just to have snacks, but that's just because I am a less delightful person if I am hungry and I'm stuck in a car. But yeah, I think really just finding like the things that are most important to you, and using those to base your rules on. Like I get a stupid amount of enjoyment from World's Largest Things, and so we'll go considerably out of our way to see some of those things. But yeah, just not saying like, well, this is what I feel like we should be doing. Like your vacation is not going to be somebody else's vacation, even if you go to the same place for the same amount of time.
So it's Route 66, and you're going all the way from Chicago to
so
LA.
We'll start in Chicago to LA to Santa Monica, and we will go through, we'll see if I can do them all. Illinois, Missouri, like 11 miles of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
Wow.
So yeah, it's about 2,500 miles. We are renting a car because we're going to fly home. So that was probably of that the biggest expense so far. And the most expensive part was picking it up in Iowa and leaving it in California. The actual like daily rental was not too expensive. And we had some enterprise car points to use towards that, which was nice. We did learn you can only use 7 days of points in one booking. So if you are ever doing that in the future, now a word to the wise. But yeah, that was the most expensive piece, was picking it up here and then leaving it there. And I think part of that is just because they're so short on rental cars at the moment that they're not trailering as many back and forth as they typically do.
I almost afford to buy one here and leave it there.
That's what my fiance said. He's like, we might as well just do that. And I was like, oh, that feels like it could go all sorts of awry. But yes, we did actually discuss that because it was a substantial enough expense that we were both like, oh, this is silly.
That's for a non-planned travel.
Yes. Yeah, that is. Yep. I was like, there feels like there could be some things. We also talked about doing, just so the drop fee was less and we could use more of our points, doing like a few 7-day bookings back to back. So we would like change cars at 7 days. And then that made us nervous too, just with how hard it is to get a rental car. And I was like, I really don't want to be in the middle of New Mexico and have them say like, we don't have anything for you, or you live here now. So that would have been tricky too. But yeah, just thinking about some of those things ahead of time. And I'm sure there will be things that we, don't anticipate, or there will be sections that will be closed for whatever reason, but at least having some of those kind of essential things thought about will hopefully be helpful.
It's an adventure.
It will be. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, you can have adventures a few blocks from home though. So that's one of my favorite things, even in like writing. So the book that I published, I wrote, it's through Arcadia Publishers, and I wrote in, oh gosh, I have no idea what years are anymore, 2019. And so we did a lot of the traveling and the eating at different supper clubs for that the summer of 2019. And those were almost all places that, even though I've lived in Iowa for 12 years and my fiance grew up here, we had mostly never been to any of the places that we went to. And so that was an equally fun adventure that was not super far from our house. That yeah, I'm excited to get back to, because you guys by you have the Lighthouse Inn, which is a great one, and then the Sudrell, which are both in the book and have delicious food. My fiance still talks about the cheese dip at the Sudrell. Was one of his most favorites.
Back in the day, the Highlander had a really nice.
Yeah, we stayed at, actually, that was one of our few other places we found this year. We stayed at the new hotel that's in the Highlander. I think it's still called the Highlander. But they have completely redone it. The same people that did the Hotel Grinnell in Grinnell have completely redone it and put in, kind of a 70s modern-y vibe. With an event space. They don't have a restaurant or a supper club kind of style thing. But that was a really fun one, because that is in the first half of the book for supper clubs that are closed and are getting kind of revived. And that was when that came out, or when that submitted that for publication, that wasn't open yet. So that was exciting to see. And then there's another one in, oh gosh, I think McGregor that was closed, had been there forever and was closed. And actually I think it's her great granddaughter or her granddaughter of the woman who opened it, has since reopened it, and it's been doing really well. So it's been fun to see them, even since we did all of that, to have more of them opening and kind of coming back, even despite last year being so tricky.
Have you been to Templeton?
No.
Templeton, where the rye.
Yes. Yeah.
Templeton Rye. That's an interesting small tour through the production area.
Yeah, we haven't done that one. We did the Cedar Ridge Distillery Tour, which was a fun one, but not as big. But yeah, that's been on our list for a while. My fiance is a big whiskey drinker, and so he's wanted to get out there. I'm trying to think what other fun and toury kind of things we've done recently. There is, just on the offbeat places, there is in, oh gosh, where is it? Gladbrook, a museum called Matchstick Marvels. And it's a man who makes replicas and sculptures all out of matchsticks, and like to scale model of the US Capitol, or like a dragon that actually breathes fire, or like just really large scale impressive things. And he's been doing it for, oh gosh, 20 or 30 years, I think. But he initially did not know that you could just buy plain matchsticks like without the match on the end. So he was buying matches in bulk and cutting them off. And then like 5 years in realized like, I don't have to do this step. Like someone they'll sell them to me without that. But that's a really cool one if you're in the market for a quirky spot. Trying to think what other, we used to spend a lot of time in Mount Vernon because we had some friends that lived up there. So that was always a favorite little getaway for us.
Nauvoo, Illinois has a really great production about the Mormons in the month of July.
Oh, that's good to know too.
We're planning a trip again out to, we just got done with it, but we're we're planning a trip again out to like the Badlands and doing more of the national parks and stuff. So in this last trip, I discovered the All Trails app because we were very into hiking and nature walking. And the paid version of it, I would highly recommend if there's anybody who really enjoys hiking or nature walks, because it saved us a couple of times on our longer hikes, because you can download the trails when you're connected to Wi-Fi, and then if your GPS still connects, it'll tell you if you're still on the trail or not. And there were definitely a couple times where we were had to backtrack because we were not on the trail and didn't realize it.
Oh, do I have a recommended international tour group? I do not do a lot of group touring internationally, but I do have some friends who do. So I will ask them who they use and email Amy that one. And then I know thoughts on going to Canada. We are not planning to travel internationally in the next year just because we don't know. And we want to make sure that my partner and I are both vaccinated, but we want to make sure that we're protecting other places that maybe have less access. But yeah, I think it's just going to be tricky like that for a little bit while different countries decide how they want to handle it and what they're going to do with borders and, letting people do things. I know people are getting around it by flying, from here to somewhere that Canada is letting in, to flying to Canada. That feels a little excessive, but I think it depends on, again, your why. Like if you're trying to, I know a friend of ours, her brother-in-law they live in Auckland in New Zealand, and they had been like apart unintentionally because of COVID for like more than a year. So like in those scenarios, I'm like, you do what you have to do. If you're recreationally traveling, obviously it, might be different, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of a wait and see of when Canada decides we can go see them again. I did learn, actually, speaking of Canada, if you are ever in northern Minnesota, has anybody been to the International Peace Garden that's up there? So if you're going through Minnesota to North Dakota, it is actually the North Dakota side, but there is a International Peace Garden that is technically not part of the US or part of Canada, that you can visit. And I believe you have to make a reservation, but they are currently open, and that is kind of a fun, they're like their own autonomous zone, and a really, really pretty botanical garden if you're ever up that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Megan,
That was
for
so
joining
fun.
us.
Thank you all.
And like Megan said, she'll reach out to some folks and send me some info and contacts, and we'll share the slides from today. And this was also recorded, so I'll share that with y'all once I get that updated and ready to go. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. We hope you got some good tips out of today's topic, and thanks for sharing some stories with us as well.
Yeah, it was good to chat with all of you. Thanks so much.